Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas and his Catholic faith. This is day 56. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 109 and 110 of the Prima Pars, that is, the ordering of the bad angels and how angels act on bodies. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code Summa 10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether there are orders among the demons. St. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, "For we are not contending against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places," which denotes order even among the demons. The demons, before they fell, would have hierarchy in that first instance of their creation, being created in grace and ordered according to the superiority or inferiority of their nature within the one angelic order. Now, after having fallen, they retain the order among themselves corresponding to their differing natures, but not according to grace and definitely not according to glory, which are both included in the order of the good angels. Aquinas then gives us an interesting aside that although it is commonly supposed that from every order within the angelic realm angels fell, we don't name the fallen angels in the same ways we do those which have remained in grace. St. Thomas explains, "The name seraphim is given from the ardor of charity, and the name thrones from the divine indwelling, and the name dominations or dominions imports a certain liberty, all of which are opposed to sin, and therefore these names are not given to the angels who sinned." Article 2, whether among the demons there is precedence. What Aquinas means by precedence is that the action of the subject should be under the action of the prelate. And he responds to this article writing briefly, the very natural disposition of the demons requires that there should be authority among them. This agrees too with divine wisdom, which leaves nothing inordinate, which, quote, reacheth from end to end mightily and ordereth all things sweetly, end quote. That's Wisdom chapter 8, verse 1. So just as there is a hierarchy among the natures of the demons, and since action follows from or flows from the being of a thing, then it is fitting that there should be a hierarchy of action as well, which is Aquinas' definition of precedence. Article 3, whether there is enlightenment in the demons. Since demons can speak to one another in the manner we discussed in the previous episode, and since they have differing degrees of excellence in their natural knowledge as received from the beginning by God, they are able to instruct one another. But Aquinas does not call this process enlightenment because he sees enlightenment as a form of instruction, directing one to God, which the demons do not do for one another. Article 4, whether the good angels have precedence over the bad angels. St. Thomas's response here is brief and comprehensive, so we will simply quote him. He says, "The whole order of precedence is first and originally in God, and it is shared by creatures accordingly as they are the nearer to God. For those creatures which are more perfect and nearer to God have the power to act on others. Now the greatest perfection and that which brings them nearest to God belongs to the creatures who enjoy God as the holy angels, of which perfection the demons are deprived, and therefore the good angels have precedence over the bad, and these are ruled by them." And with that, we move on to question 110, how angels act on bodies. Article 1, whether the corporeal creature is governed by the angels. Are physical things governed by immaterial spirits? St. Thomas quotes Gregory the Great, who writes, "In this visible world, nothing takes place without the agency of the invisible creature." And then it seems that Aquinas alludes to his first way or first proof for the existence of God, which we covered in episode 2, as kind of evidence for this position. If you remember what we showed there, that for anything to change, there must be something at the beginning of that series or change which is totally changeless. So when my hand goes from potentially moving to actually moving, although it is for sure me who is moving my hand, it is also at the same time being made possible by a series which must terminate in God, the changeless actualizer of all things, who is giving actuality to that entire chain, which ends with me moving my hand. In this article, it seems Aquinas is saying that this chain, in regard to physical things, goes through the hierarchy of angels. In his words, corporeal things have determinate actions, but they exercise such actions only according as they are moved, because it belongs to a body not to act unless moved. Hence, a corporeal creature must be moved by a spiritual creature. Now, when it comes to us, since we ourselves are a kind of spiritual creature, although we can be affected bodily by angels, our intellect and will are only open to God himself directly, and anything else indirectly. Article 2, whether corporeal matter obeys the mere will of an angel. Can raw potential for material existence, what we call matter, what Heisenberg, our quantum physicist we've been quoting along the way, took to be energy, does this absolute bottom of all material things, which doesn't even exist actually, but only potentially, obey the will of angels? St. Thomas says that only God, from whom matter and its form have come from, can inform material immediately, just by the whim of his will. But for angels or ourselves, if, for example, we wanted to split water into something else, into its constitutive elements, we will have to do so by affecting physically the water itself. We can't change it immediately from the will. St. Thomas explains this by giving us an analogy about a cook. He says, there is nothing to prevent some natural effect taking place by angelic power. This, however, is not to obey an angel's will, as neither does matter obey the mere will of a cook, when by regulating the fire according to the prescription of his art, he produces a dish that the fire could not have produced by itself. Article 3, whether bodies obey the angels as regards local motion. Here Aquinas says that angels can move bodies similar to how my intellect and will, which are entirely spiritual faculties, they're not on or in my body, are able to move my body, my hands and my feet. But the human soul being the form of the body, my ability to move the corporeal in this way is limited to my body. Angels are not limited in this way, and so they could push chairs or move other local bodies across the universe as well. Aquinas then delineates how this works according to different kinds of local movement. So there's the kind of local movement which follows from the nature of a thing, like the stone gravitating towards the center of the earth. Once I let it go, we would call that natural motion. But there is also other kinds of local movement. St. Thomas says, which do not follow from the nature of a thing, but come to the thing by means of some external agent, like the moon's influence on the waves of the sea. And it is in this way especially that angels can move physical things, but it does also seem that according to the first article of this question, Aquinas is saying that angels also play a part in that natural motion as well. But I will refer the listener to the work of Dr. Thomas McLaughlin, Dr. John Brungar, to study more on that. Article 4, whether angels can work miracles. St. Thomas's response here is kind of comical. He uses the example of a rock which has a natural motion or tendency down towards the center of the earth. He writes, a miracle properly so called is when something is done outside the order of nature, but it is not enough for a miracle if something is done outside the order of any particular nature, for otherwise anyone would perform a miracle by throwing a stone upwards, as such a thing is outside the order of the stone's nature. So for a miracle is required that it be against the order of the whole created nature. But God alone can do this, because whatever an angel or any other creature does by its own power is according to the order of created nature, and thus it is not a miracle. Hence God alone can work miracles. At the same time, both men and angels can be said to work miracles by asking God to effect them, or by being moved by God to affect them. But in either case, whether by man or angel's request or by God's mandate, the ultimate cause of the miracle must come from God. And that does it for questions 109 and 110 of the Prima Pars, that is the ordering of the bad angels and how angels act on bodies. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.